Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Diana. We're the co-chairs of Democrats Abroad Edmonton, a chapter of the official arm of the Democratic Party and a voice of the American resistance living abroad. We are dedicated to registering all U.S. citizens to vote in every single election, including this year's midterm elections, where we hope to get good candidates free of NRA ties elected to Congress. We both grew up in the U.S. during a time where massacres started to become commonplace. I grew up in Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. Diana grew up in Maryland, just outside of D.C. In 1999, we were in grade school, and we were completely shocked when late April brought about a slaughter of school children around our age in Colorado. Columbine rocked the world, and people wondered how this could happen. Our teachers blamed rock music, video games, and clothing choices, and swore that when Marilyn Manson and trench coats were out of the picture, the violence would be over. In 2001, Diana came across a school shooter manifesto written on her desk in first period math class. Her desk was then confiscated, pictures taken, kids brought in, questioned, then detained and handled. It was chalked up to too much pressure in school, mental illness, or copycat syndrome. In that perhaps they admired the Columbine murderers and wanted to become famous in their own way. We were told to stay vigilant and report anything suspicious, but there was no reason to feel unsafe at school. Only a year later, in 2002, the DC snipers would go on a rampage and murder 10 people with a Bushmaster rifle in the very same county where Diana lived. Students were told to stay away from windows until the killers were caught, and were instructed to lie down when pumping gas and walked in a zigzag line in open areas to avoid being shot. There were always half-baked answers to gun violence, and slowly but surely, families and friends often became desensitized to gun violence, or viewed it as something of a new normal that people had to be aware of, since this was the price of our Second Amendment rights. 2007 came around, and we frantically called our friends and families at Virginia Tech to make sure they weren't one of the unlucky 32 who were murdered for showing up for engineering class that day. We were horrified. Mental illness was said to be the cause, and the media shifted their attention elsewhere in the weeks that followed. And then in 2012, one of the most horrific massacres the American public saw occurred in Newtown, Connecticut, when elementary school children were senselessly murdered. Many Americans in Canada hugged their children extra tight that night, relieved that they lived in a country where they could send their children to grade school and not have to worry about their safety. The aftermath that followed, the conspiracies, the blaming of mental health, yet again, and the tears of our commander-in-chief led to many Americans becoming hopeless about the situation. If the deaths of 28 school children didn't convince politicians to stand up to the dirty lobbyists' money and pass common-sense gun regulations that could help protect other kids in the future, nothing would. Many of us decided that with universal health coverage and stricter gun regulations, staying in Canada was the best choice for our children. We were and are angry that we feel exiled from our homeland, since the only reasonable choice for peace of mind was to be living somewhere with common sense gun regulation, one that didn't have a culture that was focused around the worship of weapons, and one that didn't have politicians bought and sold with dirty money from an organization dedicated to keeping guns completely deregulated. After years and years of being barraged with countless mass shootings, we lost hope. We lost hope that we could ever win against the NRA. We lost hope that anyone would ever care enough to stand up to the NRA. And we lost hope that anything would ever change in our homeland. On February 14th of this year, a day meant for celebrating love, the latest massacre happened in Parkland, Florida, and 17 students and teachers lost their lives to another shooting. But afterwards, something changed. In the days to follow, the usual thoughts and prayers came pouring in from politicians who couldn't care less about gun regulations. And yet we also heard strong voices of resistance ring out against them, declaring, "Not this time." Students such as myself and Diana, who grew up in fear, who practiced how to be safe during school shootings, became fed up, that this was the way that we could deal with things. They've become a voice for us all, who have been afraid, defeated, or hopeless when it comes to fighting for common sense gun reform in the past. They've shown passion, courage, and determination in the face of one of the strongest lobbies in America. And with the shooting in Maryland just a few days ago, instead of backing down, across the country are leading a renewed resistance that demands concrete action and not just meaningless words. Democrats abroad applaud these young leaders of today, and we proudly stand in solidarity and strength with them, and always to lead that change. If any of you in this crowd are American, we urge you to register to vote for the coming elections in November of this year. Even if you've registered in the past, by federal law, U.S. citizens living abroad must re-register to vote every election year in order to cast an absentee ballot. Also, write your congressman. Tell them about your experiences living here versus living in the U.S. and discuss meaningful reforms you'd like to see from them on a state and national level. You can find all these ways to accomplish these things by visiting the website votefromabroad.org. But most of you here are not citizens of the U.S. and are wondering what you can do to help. We need you to urge every single American friend you have, even if they're a dual citizen, even if they weren't born in the U.S., even if they've never lived there, as long as they have a U.S. Social Security number, they can and should register to vote. Urge them to visit votefromabroad.org and vote for candidates that aren't on the payroll of the NRA and who will support bills that will keep Americans and Canadians safe from guns. Our friends and family living stateside deserve it. Not everyone can move to Canada just to feel safe, and it's up to everyone to get involved in any way they can. Years of frustration and anger have finally come to a boiling point, and now is the time for action on a mass scale. Keep the pressure on the politicians, make your demands heard, or vote them out. Things can and will change. Thank you.